Hello and welcome. I'm Darla LeDoux. I'm the founder of a company called Sourced and the author of a couple of books on the business of transformation, Retreat and Grow Rich and Shift the Field. If you are someone who uses your art as medicine, you use your art for transformation, we're going to have a conversation about something I teach in this book, which is called The Anatomy of a Transformation, and how you can actually use it if you are creating art for your client or if your client is actually creating art and you're facilitating. So that's what you can expect from this conversation today. I'll tell you a little more about myself here in a moment, but I want to introduce Ashley Woods. Ashley is the head of our certification program here at Source. Ashley, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, it's great to be here. As Darla said, I am the facilitator of our level 1 training here. I support magical leaders in developing the skills and the confidence to deliver transformational work in the world. I help my clients build businesses that are designed around their magic, and it's the best thing I can think to do.
As I said, I'm Darla LeDoux. I call myself a recovering engineer. So I'm not exactly someone with an artist background. Okay. So when I went to college, I became an engineer because my math teacher said, "You're good at math and science. You should be an engineer if you can." And I literally didn't question it. And that's what I did. So I came from this background of using numbers and data to prove what I wanted to do, to prove what was valuable, to prove the direction we should go, etc. Then over time, as I got into my own personal development and fell in love with transformation, and I started to learn more about who I actually am at a soul level, I started to discover what I now call my magic, which is the way that Source was wanting to work with and through me to raise the consciousness on the planet. So if you're watching this, you probably have a language for that or know what that means. So little intuitive nudges would start to come through. And eventually I got more and more frustrated with the confines of being an engineer at a Fortune 20 company. And I left. And I left with the draw to this work of transformation. I knew I really had discovered for myself that if people could hear their own knowing and trust themselves and speak the truth, the world would be a different place. I had no idea how to go about doing that as my line of work, but I knew I was called. And so I went to coaching school and I got into business coaching, transformational masterminds and things like that, and really grew my business and learned all the things and started to develop my own body of work around how people like us, because the gap that I saw, Ashley, was that I could learn a lot about business or I could work on my mindset, but it was like they were separate, right? And there wasn't, no one was talking about, are you good at the thing you're offering? Right. So it was like, here's a modality and then go do the modality. Or here's how to sell something as an entrepreneur, go sell something. But there was no place where it was like, am I actually good at this? Right. Am I helping people? Do I have the tools to both grow my business and serve people? And I wasn't really finding that. And I was finding people were looking for that. So thus, writing these books and really creating the offerings that we have today. But I wanted to share that I'm coming from probably a very different place than most people here with that engineering background, right? And today I love, love, love helping people to trust their knowing and let go of all of that over analyzing.
So how I find myself here. In a former life, I was a photographer. So I fell in love with photography and had a little photography business for quite a few years, doing family work and portrait work. And I did a stint of weddings. If anybody's done photography work, you know what all that's like. And then I went on my first retreat, as you phrased it, Darla, fell in love with transformation. And, it just changed everything. Like I knew at that point, like, oh, I want more of this. And yet I was still doing my photography business. Like that was my livelihood. But there came a point where when I left my first retreat, it was really with this understanding that we have the power to create who we want to be in the world. Before that, I just thought I was this way. I was good at this. I was not good at this. And, I could be better and be a little bit more like this. And I shouldn't be quite as much like that. But then there was this knowing that like, oh, I'm actually everything and nothing. And it's all a creation and I can create it. And that started to shift how I was looking at things and how I wanted to play in the world. And so there was a point where my photography and my love for transformation just naturally started to come together because I couldn't just take photos anymore. It wasn't satisfying. I wanted to be bringing forward what I knew and offering it to people in a really powerful way. And so I started to infuse that into my work and design my work for it. I began doing these, what I called celebrate sessions. And so people would come in and we would start with this whole creation conversation where we would explore how they're feeling their soul called to evolve in this next chapter of their life. Mm-hmm. We would start to really like tune into that and become, start to get the textures and the colors and the shape of it. And we would design a photography shoot based on that. And it was really about helping them to step in and be able to embody this energy that was calling them, even though they weren't quite sure how to get there. Mm-hmm. And it made my photography really fun again. And so that was like an interim place in my business before I went like really full throttle into just offering transformation.
What would you say changed? And, we're going to give a few examples, but I love that you have this background. What changed when you went from, let me take your portrait mm-hmm. to we're doing a transformational experience?
Well, how I held it absolutely changed. The structure that I provided or the process I walked someone through and my intention was totally different. How I spoke about it and marketed it and what I charged for it were completely different. Mm. So there was one way that I was, doing a portrait session and, it's like a couple of $100 or $800 or something like that. It's like, and then there was this other side where I could do this celebrate session. And it was really like moving someone through a process that was incredibly powerful. And I could charge several $1,000s for it and feel really solid about that because I could see they weren't just getting photos.
Yeah.
They weren't paying me for photos. Yeah. They were paying me for this shift. And then they happened to get this collection of photos as like a reminder or a representation of the work we had done. But it was really, the focus was really more on the energy and the photography kind of came along for the ride.
I love that you brought up energy because we say we're an energy first company and we train other energy first leaders, right? So our entire world gets created. As you were saying, Ashley, you started to notice, oh, I get to create my world.
That's right.
Well, our entire world gets created from our energy, the energy we choose to be and emanate, and then that affects what we notice and attract, right? Oh. And so that shift in energy takes something from being like, oh, check, I need photos for my website, to I've shifted my energy and everything is possible.
Big difference.
And so the value is totally different. I want to speak about the anatomy, and I'm going to share another example. So we have your photography example on the table, and I'll share an example of something I purchased. And then we'll walk through the anatomy of a transformation and break it down in terms of how could someone use this to increase the value of their work and to shift the results people get. So I, a while back, got a soul song created for me. So this beautiful artist with amazing voice. I had been to a bunch of her sound healings and things, and I just love her, adore her. And she offered this soul song, and the value was $500. And so I got the soul song. I was very excited to get the soul song for $500. Felt like a steal, right? And, she tuned in. to my soul. We call this your magic when you're really tuning in and,
Mhm.
receiving truths on behalf of a person. That's your magic. So we have a quiz about this and whatnot. But she downloaded this song and then she wrote a little description about the song, like what the segments meant, and then sent it to me in an email. And then that was it. So
Okay.
now it's up to me to decide. And I listen to it sometimes when I want to meditate and drop in, and it's beautiful. And so I'm super happy with it. And I also think with this information, like, ooh, how could she make a program around getting your own soul song?
Hmm.
Right. So,
Hear all the opportunities in it as you say it like
uh-huh.
that. Like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, because each piece is significant, right? There's like a handful of chants within it that means something, right? And if this is your soul's truth being reflected in music, and you're a human being, a normal human being like me, well, I'm sort of normal, you're probably going to miss some of the nuances, or you
Hmm.
might even resist listening to it.
That's what I was going to say. Like, there might be parts of it that you can't receive fully, but you don't even really know why. And to be able
Right.
to see that and release that in order to fully on the song. Yeah, got
Yeah.
that.
I
Mhm.
remember when I got it and I was with a friend and I was like, do I share this? Do I not? Like, oh my gosh, like letting someone see my soul. I haven't even seen my soul yet. Right. And so,
Hear it.
yeah, it's tender, right? It's like, it's an intimate thing. So, with that in mind, I just want to share this context. So, I love the flip chart. So, the anatomy of a transformation, there's 3 stages. So, stage 1 is commitment. Stage 2, we call the sourced experience, and I'll break that down. And then stage 3 is integration. And as we said, everything is energy, right? And we're shifting our energy first. So, before we move through a cycle of transformation, we are generally in what we call a default energy. Default meaning there's some pattern we're in, some way of being we're expressing that is actually not congruent with our goals, not congruent with our soul's path. And that's why life gets sticky, right? We bump up against our default. So, for example, if I think I have to always do the smart thing. This was my big one when I was in the process of leaving engineering to become a life coach, right? If it's not, if I have a default energy that is, I have to look smart, I can't leave my engineering job to become a coach.
Mhm.
I just can't. But where did I get the idea that I have to be smart to get love? That's a default. That was based on a lie, something I made up as a kid that then filtered everything, right? So when we have a default energy, we're just out of alignment with what our soul really wants, which my soul loves this work, right?
Mhm.
So we move through this process. On the other side, we're in what we call sourced energy. And this is really connected to our soul's truth, aligned, alive, vibrant. And this process shifts us from default to source energy. So, if you're here and you're an artist and you're thinking, how do I use my work to help someone shift their energy? We can call that your medicine, right? Or your magic. This structure is going to help you with that. So, first, the commit stage. This is when you're working with someone about whether or not they're actually committed to shifting their energy. And there's 3 parts to this, which we'll break down in a minute. But you're having a conversation with someone, a sales conversation, right? And it can be an actual conversation or it could be on a web page. But you're having a sales conversation with someone, having them explore if they actually want to shift their energy. So if we think about, I just bought this beautiful piece of art. It's over there. It's a horse. I'm redecorating my office. I looked at it and I loved it. And then I made a decision to buy it. But I wasn't making a decision that was like, am I shifting my life by buying this? Right. It wasn't like a deep
Right.
commitment conversation, right? But in when you're doing transformational work, it really is like helping someone to see there's something that they want and they're in their own way. So, Ashley, if you think about with photography, how did that go?
Well, I think to your point, like you said, someone can have on a checklist, oh, I need to get headshots or I need new photos for my website, which ended up being a lot of the people that I would work with, right? Business owners, entrepreneurs, people that were putting themselves out there, so to speak, in some way. Yeah, if I'm just a service that's going to check a box, it's like this X number of photos for this, and they say yes or they say no. But when I was really clear that what I was doing was shifting energy, then the conversation was really about who's your business asking you to be? And in what ways is that feeling scary for you or exciting for you? Tell me about that. What's going to change in your business when you step more fully into that expression? What are you finding that's hard about that now? And really looking with them, okay, if we could transform that and shift that, and you could be bold or magnetic or frisky or whatever you're saying, like, so really like exploring with them what could be possible on the other side of it. I think it was really, really clear people were coming in for much more than a photo shoot in how they would feel about it,
Who is your business calling you to be? So in this stage, we're really looking at the desire, right? Who do you want to be? What's calling to you? Or the discomfort. Discomfort meaning, what do you no longer want in your life that you're moving away from? And some combination of this is what's going to cause someone to be willing to go to this next step where they're going to become someone new, right? Or more of who they have always been. Remember who they are, however you want to phrase it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm hearing you say you help them get present to their real commitment, why they were really there, and that it was more than just checking the box of photos. And the thing is, people don't even know that that's an option a lot of times.
Right.
So we're becoming more aware of it, and there's more demand for doing this transformationally. But a lot of times people aren't aware that it's an option to hire someone who's actually photographing your future you.
Right. I think they know something has changed and therefore it's out of date or not fresh, but I think it feels like, oh, I'm going to get a photo with this new length of my hair or this new style of clothes. And it's like, oh yeah, that's
right.
Not quite it.
Right. I remember I hired a branding agency once, and we went through this whole process of what do you do? Who do you work with? And I remember at the end, I'm like, yeah, okay, it was good, but it was branding who I was. Like every question they asked was about the past. Tell me about these 3 people who worked with you. Tell me. And it was like, but what about where I'm going? Right. So it was good, but it was out of date quickly.
Well, and that makes me think, if you take it to a different kind of, like you said, commissioning the soul song, if someone's commissioning, I'm going to assert, I don't know, but if someone's commissioning a piece of art from you, they're wanting to receive something that they perceive is your medicine, your magic. There's an opening for that.
Yes.
Just inherent in the request or the.
Yeah. So this conversation helps you know, are they here for something more or is it just a transaction?
Yeah.
And, both are great.
Yeah. Both have their place.
Exactly. So then the sourced experience here has 3 stages. And this is really what we want to speak to around your artwork. And so I'm going to speak to integration a little bit. Integration is the place where they take their shift and start putting it into their life. So maybe changing how they show up as a parent or as a spouse or as a leader or, in their business. That's the integration. So a lot of people skip this part. And I feel like with this conversation in particular, it's it's a personal preference. Do you want to support your clients over time as they learn to be in their new energy or not? And if not, is there a product you could give them to support? Is the artwork a talisman? And maybe there's some kind of, meditating with the artwork. Or I worked with a jeweler once who all of her pieces were talisman representing something that was the new stage of their life they were integrating. So yeah, so integration goes here. But in this stage, we're all about receiving truth, and I want to speak to, we talk about your magic, and there's a magic we call expression magic. And expression, I feel a lot of artists have a lot of expression magic where you're channeling, right? You're just getting the vibration that wants to come through, the imagery, the symbolism, whether it's in music or art, etc. There's a truth in the creation, right? An energetic truth in the creation, like the soul song felt a deep resonance of truth within me. What we want to know is that humans sometimes, like, to receive a new truth, we have to first release control. Right? So the first part of the sourced experience is release. We release control, we surrender, right? We go, oh, maybe there's a different way. So if you're watching, I want you to think about, how might your clients experience this when they're working with you? So if they're commissioning art, is there a sense of surrendering to how you see them or how you see the circumstance? If you're coaching them through their own creative process, what is going to come up to stop them from creating? And will they let that go long enough to see what that is that's actually been stopping them from creating? Ashley, anything there for you on release when you think about your photography work?
Well, I know we talk about release a lot of times in the anatomy that is often happens when someone makes that commitment and they step into, photography work with me, or a painting workshop with you, or a dance retreat with you, or whatever your art is. Like, a lot of times the very saying yes to it and putting themselves in the container or the space will provide that release. So that's what I think of as like having a place that you're holding them.
Yes.
Right. That feels really clear. Like, okay, this is the place you're stepping into that's going to hold you. It's like the safe little walls that can let you break loose.
Yes. So in our world, when we're coaching, it's like the container, right? It's like, how long is the program? How many sessions? Or the retreat is 3 days, right? And it's happening these 3 days. That's the container. The structure of, we're going to have a conversation and I'm going to learn about you. And then I'm going to go create this thing. And then we're going to come back together and we're going to look at what are you seeing in this? How is that impacting you? How is that different than how you've seen yourself? That's a container, right? Like having sessions or time frame around it. The releasing is when your person feels safe to surrender into your container. They're getting the cues from you that you're leading, they're going somewhere, and they don't have to control the process. That's really this piece. So it's how you structure what you're offering. The next piece is receive. And here we are receiving truth. This is, and without going too far, because you will be able to look at this in the map we're sending along with this. But the receiving truth is like seeing what's actually true with a capital T as compared to what we call the small t truth, or what's based on a lie. So there's something you believed when you were young. So I'm going to go back to I have to be smart to get love. That wasn't actually true, right? Like whether or not my dad loved me was not contingent upon my being smart, right? But that's how I interpreted it. He had his own stuff, and it wouldn't have mattered how smart or how not smart or what, he would have been him, right? He'd be him, I'd be me, it'd just be happening. But in my mind, it was like, be smart, get love. That was a small t truth. And the capital T truth is I'm valuable inherently, right? Capital T truth is my dad had whatever my dad had. that had nothing to do with me. And so I could then move on and create something new. But as long as I felt like I had to be smart to get love, it was like becoming certified as a coach could have been in front of my face for a million years and I would have never accepted it as an option. And if I think about the soul song, right, there's huge opportunity to be in the presence of the song and look at what's bubbling up. Where is there resistance? What does this make you feel? If you embody this fully, what do you have to let go of? Right? There's a lot of conversation that can happen here that's energy shifting for your client around the creation, whether you create it or they create it.
I'm even thinking of even whether it was a conversation or not. I'm imagining when you said it, a moment of coming together with the artist and just having her or him, her, having, that's what you said, having her witness you receive the song.
Yes.
Even that, minus conversation, I think would have been really amazing.
Completely. And this is where, we say your magic comes in. So there's 6 types of sourced magic. And, I'm sure if you join our list, you'll learn all about that. But this is where, however you hold space with your client and allow them to see truth, or you reflect a truth, that happens in this tender, safe container. And it really can shift something for someone permanently. Okay, the next piece here, I know I'm cut off on my paper.
Yeah, your microphone's going to cover this.
I see that. Is rise. So rise is, what do you create from the new truth, right? So when we can clear that old truth that was not actually true, what can you create instead? And that's the rise, rising in a new energy. There's a whole process we teach in our certification for helping people shift into that new energy. And then from there, they go into integrating, right? Like practicing being the new you. You may decide you want to provide an integration support, and you may not. You may want to just focus on this for your creative work. I know a lot of people don't like being confined to doing things over time. That said, you're leaving a lot of money on the table without this piece, right? So, Ashley, I'm thinking, you hosted so many retreats with dance as a focus. If someone was using dance as their modality, how might they, help someone try on a new energy and then go integrate it?
Yes, I love that. So you see something about how you're moving and it reveals something about how you're moving through your life. Okay, I can move in a new way. You obviously have to practice moving in new ways before it just becomes second nature, because you're going to go back into your life and default right back into the same, like habitual moves. I'm thinking how you could come at, like, you could hold someone in a 6-week practice program, even it could be simple or small, right? It could be 6 weeks of group practice in moving in new ways, or it could be like a one-on-one personal support over 3 months or 6 months, where you're really helping them to like take that new movement into their relationship and into their physical health and relationship with themselves, or any number of ways that you might start. I think that when we start talking about how you might structure integration, or any of the work for that matter, it's like, how do you like to work? And how do you most love to support people, and finding ways to do it like that. So even getting together, and for me, it'd be like, we could dance with them, right? We could dance together and see what we see about how they're moving, or what's now becoming available. And that would be really fun.
Love it. So I'm thinking of a couple of examples. We talked about our client, Annette, who I have actually hired, so I can speak to this personally. Annette does interior design, and it's a very creative process. She's done traditional design for a long time before stepping into the world of transformation. So there's like the blueprints and the layout and the dimensions and the exact things. And then there's using that creative process of interior design as a transformation. Having been through her process, it's not just like, okay, here's what looks pretty, but it's she tunes in. Again, I'm going to use the word soul to your soul and what you're creating and what you're building and the intention of the space and where you're going. And this is the thing about bringing your magic in. It's like, can access all the timelines, right? So we can access where we're going, not just where we've been. My experience was then she would tune in and then share the elements that were needed in the space. And immediately running things by me, I could feel like, okay, I can feel like this dark background. I've never had a dark background, but I feel the energetic support of the dark background, which I would have never thought of how if it weren't for this organic process and her tuning in of like, oh, this is what I'm seeing, this support for you behind you.
Mm-hmm.
So that again shifts from selling a design, which
Service.
someone may or may not implement, first of all, or they may or may not vibe with, right? It may look, magazine perfect, but maybe it doesn't support their transformation, where they're going, and my tendency would have been to be like, okay, how do I just make this all look good behind me? Right. No matter where you go in the office, make sure it looks good behind me because I do a lot of video. Right. But like, no, it's more than that. Yeah. And then I know we talked about Rhiannoch, one of our clients who uses poetry. Do you want to speak to that, Ashley?
Yeah. She's just so wonderfully gifted, but she resonates with poetry, others and her own. Sometimes she writes her own on behalf of clients or works with clients inside of her program to channel a poem that they can then practice embodying. So it's like a piece of writing that is calling them into being, and they work with it over time until it just becomes like who they are, the embodiment of this poetry. It's really unique and beautiful.
Back to the value of that, just telling someone, here's a poem is one thing. And it's another thing to say, tell me about what you desire in your life in this next season. Okay, what's uncomfortable here? What are we shifting really? And then bringing in a poem that's truth revealing.
Yeah.
Right? And so some of that might be the client knows like what new source energy they want to move into, but more often than not, this is the magic part, is that she's guiding and she's asking enough questions and tuning into her magic to see what is the thing that if they could see it and they could embody it, it would change everything. Right? What are they pretending not to know?
Yeah, such a good way to say it. That's right.
And then the poem kind of forces the knowing in a way, right? Should they choose to embody it. And so again, it goes from, oh, here's a book of poetry to here's anything you want in your life in, 3 months.
Yeah.
Truly, it's an access or a portal to anything the client wants. I know you spoke of commissioning a piece of art, and I actually have an experience of commissioning a piece of art as well. So should we talk about that?
Sure. Well, I think exactly I feel like I commissioned art from someone because I was so resonant with their art. And I wanted a piece of that magic, right? Just the way he expressed his stories and the way they so succinctly captured something. And it's like, I wanted to see something about myself reflected in that. So I think again, just like I was immediately receptive to his magic. Which is why I went to him, right? So it's like the commitment is there. And I was like, okay, put your magic on me, do me. And it was an interesting process. It was very artistic in that it was like undefined and not on a particular, I say artistic, stereotypically speaking, right? But like not on a particular timeline. We were at the mercy of inspiration. So it was it was a process that took almost 2 years that we were kind of engaged. And, I paid a chunk of change and then I just kind of sat back and waited to see what happened. And we would touch in every once in a while where it had been like, 6 months and there was still really nothing to say about it. Or a year later, it's like, oh, well, let me update you about what's happening in my life relevant to this art, perhaps. And so we'd had some communication. It was interesting that I come from this background of transformation. So I think I have to frame it with that because I understand how it works and I'm always looking through that lens. I was able to explore the experience for myself, like, whoa, what's happening here? And so
Right.
it was a really powerful experience, the way it all unfolded, because I really trusted that I was in this container, not because he said so.
You made your own container.
I said so. Yeah.
I feel like that's worth underlining because, I think in the title we said your transformation too, right? This works for you also as the artist as you're creating. And as you start to master this, you really do bring it everywhere.
Yes.
Like you could hire a mediocre coach about whatever, and you decide this is what I'm
Yes.
going to see a truth in this. And
Yes.
maybe the truth is, ooh, this coach really isn't for me. And why do I keep putting my trust in people who aren't for me? And maybe that's the truth, right? But you're bringing something to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have one more commissioned art share and we'll close here and I share the resources. So, Ashley, my neighbor is an artist, my former neighbor. That's part of the story. And so she was showing me her artwork and she does this beautiful resin work and embeds crystals. And it's like a living crystal on your wall, right? And organite. And she puts those materials in. And so I was like, ooh, I want one of these. And I had this big space in my house in Texas. And I was like, I want a piece of art here. And she had never commissioned anything. And I was like, well, will you? She said, sure, it'll be an experiment. So I paid $1,000, which I'm not going to say her name because it will cost a lot more now.
As it should.
But here's what's cool, right? Like she's in this world of transformation, though not at that time wasn't yet packaging things in this format. But she had me come and paint on the substrate all of my intentions embedded in the artwork. And then she knew my colors and stuff. And then she asked me kind of the vibe I was going for. And I was like, ooh, I could see it feeling kind of like a magical forest and this. And, so she kind of sketched out just in general, but it's resin. So it goes where it wants. Right. So I painted the intentions underneath and she held me with that. She did an Akashic Records journey on my behalf and then showed me what she got. And so we're, embedding this in the art as well. And it came out and I had imagined this magical forest. And instead it looked like mountains with a creek and all of this. And just like, oh, that's mountains. She's like, I tried to make it look like trees, but this is where it wanted to go, right? It's mountains. And so when I got it and I hung it up and it's gorgeous and I could feel it and it's got all these crystals and all the things. But I now live in the mountains where that literally could be my view out the window with the mountains and the creek, right? And that all unfolded by magic. I was living in Texas and now I live in Colorado and I've got the mountains. And I remember when I saw it, I said, oh, don't tell me I have to move back to Colorado.
Oh, yeah. You knew. You got
And then I just fell in love and I moved to Colorado. So, that container, that was a container. That was a transformational container, right? And I didn't know where it was leading necessarily, but I knew it was for this space in this house. And when I did it, I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to stay in this house, but I need this here.
Yeah. Amazing.
And, what's the value of that? Like, can you even put a price on that experience? And if I were coaching her on it, I would have said, yeah, she did a pretty good job with this, except for she would have charged more to have greater commitment on my part. But then what, a little bit more formal here when you have the art, what's it showing you? right? What's coming up and yeah.
What's it evoking, or how's it speaking to you?
Mm.
And yeah,
What changes are you going to make now that you've received this, right?
yeah.
Now that you're living with it.
I'm thinking how people might want to just make beautiful art. And I don't mean just, but
Mm-hmm.
such a
Mm-hmm.
such a gift and a use of magic and a total transmission to put your art out.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people might feel this desire to have their art be medicine in this particular way, where they're really
Yeah.
guiding someone through an energetic shift that leaves them in a whole different space and energy of what's possible. And I think art is such a brilliant doorway into this work. So it's really exciting for me to think that, people are doing this type of thing, and then they're marrying it with their desire for delivering transformation, and what a potent combo.
Well, and I'm also thinking, Ashley, from the standpoint of, say, I'm just creating something that my soul wants to create, and it's a certain frequency and it has an impact when people encounter it, right? Like that art that I'm describing when people walked in, they're like,
Yeah.
right. So it's also affecting people visiting. It can go out and do the thing, and maybe you want some kind of integration like a journaling process. Maybe it's like a simple e-course that you sell with your art, or even it comes free with your art and you increase the price. That's like, meditate once a week with this, and here's the things you want to ask yourself. Maybe you recommend a journal, you partner with a journaling company or something like that, and you put that on your website, which is, bringing in this integration piece, even if they aren't clear what the truth is they're receiving, even if it's just an energetic transmission of truth that they're present with. And then they start to create awareness in the integration. We look forward to welcoming you to our community and on our list. We do various trainings, free trainings during the year. We have a live retreat. We have a virtual retreat that we do. And of course, we have our certification program where Ashley leads level 1 and I lead level 2. So much fun. And we'd love to work with you.
Thanks for spending time with us today.
Bye, everyone.